My name is Douri bint Salmon Al Hawmed. I was born into Saudi royalty, into a world of marble flowers, cowed friend chronic calligraphy, and cows at a three cat. From the outside, my life looked perfect. Inside, it felt like a palace built on sand. Our palace on the edge of Riyadh had 43 rooms, each filled with imported furniture and thickest chandeliers. Servants glided through the corridors so quietly it felt like the house was breathing around me. As a child, I traced my fingers along the carved wooden doors and thought, this must be what a paradise looks like. But even paradise had rules. By the time I was 4, I knew the sound of the Fajr call to prayer better than my own heartbeat. At 5, I stood next to my mother on the prayer rack, my tiny hands lifted, repeating words I did not yet understand, only knowing that obedience made everyone smile. At 6, my father proudly told us that I would one day be a jewel of Islam. A daughter whose memorization of the Quran would bring honor to the family. I believed him. I believed them all. From the first day I could walk without ihnan is hanged, I was taught 3 things, أو by أول, أو by Bob, and never bring shame. Shame was described to me like an invisible fire. If I stepped outside the lanes, it would burn out only me, but everyone who carried your family name. So I walked carefully. As a girl, I watched the men of my family come and go freely, traveling to Europe, America, Dubai. The women stayed inside. My mother, Princess Najwa, moved through the palace like a beautiful shadow, perfectly dressed, perfectly silent, perfectly tired. I did not yet understand why her eyes sometimes looked older than her face. I only knew this. I was a Saudi princess, and princesses did not choose their own stories. Their stories were chosen for them. This is how Jesus rewrote mine. People think a palace means freedom. You can have anything you want. The truth is simpler and crueler. In my world, a palace means you never learn what wanting truly is. Every morning in our Riyadh palace followed the same script. My day began at 4:30 a.m., with my mother shaking me gently, her voice a whisper. Yalla habibti. Prayer. I'd stumble to the bathroom, wash for wudu, and stand beside her on the thick emerald prayer rug imported from Iran. My forehead pressed the woven pattern so often that some of the threads grew thin under my favorite spot. After Fajr, there was Quran. My tutor, Sheikh Mahmoud, had a voice like iron and eyes that never seemed to soften. He sat across from me at a low table in the library, his long white beard resting on his chest as he pointed at each line. A single mispronounced letter earned me a sharp rap on the knuckles with his thin stick. The pain was small, but the humiliation was deep. Still, I learned. By 10, I had memorized large portions of the Quran, verses that rolled off my tongue like water over stone. During the day, I studied Islamic jurisprudence, Arabic literature, and royal etiquette. A separate teacher instructed me in how to lower my eyes, how to serve coffee, how to sit just upright enough to convey dignity, but not so confidently that it might be read as arrogance. I learned where a princess's hands should rest, how far her voice should carry, and how her laughter should never be too loud. Outside the palace walls, Riyadh grew and changed with each passing year. Inside, time felt frozen. I was not allowed to go anywhere without a male guardian and abaya. Even in the family compound, my movements were watched. Cameras in the hallways, guards at the entrances, aunties who commented on every small deviation from proper behavior. My world was big in wealth and small in choice. Sometimes, in the late afternoon, I would go to the rooftop and look over the city, cars glittering like insects below. I used to whisper, "Does anyone down there know I exist?" Then I would quickly blame myself for such thoughts. A good daughter did not question the life Allah had given her. I did not yet know that the cage would soon become smaller, and darker, and shared. My mother, Princess Najwa, was the most beautiful woman I had ever seen. Her abayas were tailored perfectly. Her makeup was always soft, never harsh. But the thing people always commented on was her composure. She carried herself like a woman who had accepted her place and made peace with it. They were wrong. As a child, I thought my mother's quietness was a sign of strength. When my father entered a room, she would fall silent, folding her hands, tilting her head. Later, when I was 12, I began to notice something else. A flicker in her eyes, like a candle catching wind for a second, before steadying again. In the women's section of the palace, my aunts gossiped freely. I learned that my father had married my mother as his first wife when she was just 17, and he was nearly twice her age. They also whispered that, before him, there had been another man, a man she had loved. A marriage arranged, then broken, then reshaped to fit the wishes of the older generation. I didn't have all the details, but I could tell this. My mother had not always belonged to my father, and the way her eyes darkened whenever an old song played on television told me that the past still lived inside her. One night, when I was 14, I found her alone in her dressing room, sitting at her vanity without a veil, her dark hair loose around her shoulders. Her reflection in the mirror looked tired in a way I had never seen. "Ummi?" I whispered. She forced a smile. "Of course, Habibti. I am fine." I stepped closer. The question hung in the air like forbidden perfume. My mother's eyes met mine in the mirror. For a moment, the palace, the rules, the cameras, everything seemed to disappear. It was just a mother and a daughter, two women in a world that did not belong to us. "I wanted many things," she said softly. "But a woman learns quickly which dreams are safe to keep and which ones must be buried." She did not say more. She did not need to. I filed her words carefully in my heart, not yet understanding that one day her buried dreams would collide violently with mine around one man and one marriage neither of us truly chose. His name was Faisal al-Harbi, a respected businessman from a powerful family in Jeddah. I first saw him when I was 19, sitting in my father's private majlis, his voice deep and confident as he discussed an investment project. I was not supposed to be listening, but the door to the women's side was slightly ajar, and curiosity is stronger than etiquette when you are 19 and bored. He was older, maybe in his mid-40s, with streaks of grey at his temples that my aunts later called distinguished. His watch was expensive, his words smooth, his laughter calculated. Men like that always seemed to know the exact weight of their own presence in a room. After that meeting, I began hearing his name more often. Baba mentioned him at dinner, praising his reliability and traditional values. My uncles joked about profitable deals. My mother stayed quiet, her eyes lowered, but her hands fidgeted more than usual. Weeks passed. I learned that Faisal was already married to a woman who, according to gossip, had become too Western for his taste. She forgot what it means to be a Saudi wife. An aunt sniped one afternoon, shaking her head. "He needs more stability." Stability! The word made my stomach tighten. One evening, my father summoned me to his study. The room smelled of oud and old leather, walls lined with books and framed photographs of him with important men. I entered with my abaya pulled tight, my heart pounding in a rhythm I tried to ignore. "Sit, Dora," he said, gesturing to the chair opposite his desk. I obeyed. He spoke calmly, as if discussing business. "You are a woman now. It is time to think of your future. Alhamdulillah, Allah has brought an honorable man who wants to honor you with marriage." A spark of fear flickered in my chest. "Faisal al-Harbi." The room tilted slightly. "But he is already married," I said before I could stop myself. My father's expression cooled. "He is a man. Men may have more than one wife. You know this." I did know. Every girl in our world knew. Still, something inside me recoiled. I tried to swallow it. Obedience. Obedience. "What about his first wife?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "A situation will be arranged," he replied vaguely. "You will not concern yourself with that. I nodded, but some invisible line had been crossed inside me. I was not being invited into a new life. I was being moved like a piece on a board. I still did not understand that this situation Baba spoke of involved not just another woman, it involved my mother. The truth arrived in pieces, following me like a shadow. First came the women's whispers. A cousin who mentioned seeing Faisal's car outside our palace late at night. An aunt's half-finished sentence, "Well, after everything with your mother and that proposal years ago," cut off when she realized I was listening. Then came the tone shift in my mother. She grew quieter whenever Baba spoke of Jeddah. Sometimes, when she thought no one was watching, I saw her fingers press against the space just under her collarbone, like she was trying to hold something broken inside. The final piece came on an afternoon heavy with desert heat. Baba called both of us, my mother and me, into his study. I had never been summoned with her before. My heart knew something my mind could not yet name. We entered together, two women bound to the same man, though in different ways. My mother as wife, me as daughter. My father did not ask us to sit. He remained behind his desk, hands folded. "Allah has opened a door for our family," he said, his voice full of that calm certainty I had been trained to accept as truth. "Years ago, Najwa, you remember, there was a proposal between our family and Faisal's. Circumstances changed, and that path closed. Now Allah, in His wisdom, has reopened it." My mother's knuckles whitened around the edge of her abaya. He continued, "Faisal has agreed to take responsibility for both of you. He will divorce his current wife and marry Dora, and he will remarry you, Najwa, under a new contract, in Jeddah. 2 nikahs, 1 family, 1 strong alliance." For a moment, my mind refused to process the words. I stared at him, then at my mother, then back at him. "Baba, what do you mean? Both of us?" My voice trembled. He looked mildly annoyed that I needed clarification. "You will be co-wives, ya binti. You will share a home, a husband, a life, mother and daughter united under one man's protection. It is unusual, but not haram according to the scholars I consulted. It preserves honor and consolidates wealth. It is a blessing." My heart stopped. The room blurred. My mother finally spoke, her voice thin. "Salman, people will talk." He waved a hand. "Let them talk. We will control the story. It will be framed as a return to an old promise. You both know what is expected. We do not refuse what Allah places in front of us." He used Allah like a stamp on his own desires. In that moment, something shattered inside me. Marriage to an older man was already hard enough to imagine. But sharing that man with my own mother, sharing a bed, a body, a life, felt like stepping into a nightmare that had no name. I tried to speak. No words came. My father ended the conversation with the finality of a slammed door. "The engagement will be announced next month. You will both show gratitude. Do you understand?" I nodded mechanically. My mother nodded too, tears burning but unshed. 2 women, 1 man, 1 secret the world would never be allowed to see clearly. I went to bed that night feeling more like an object than a person. And for the first time in my life, my prayers did not comfort me. They terrified me. The engagement announcement was a lavish blur, gold trays, camera flashes, congratulatory messages flooding my phone from royal cousins who wrote things like, "Mabruk, Habibti, you are so blessed." None of them knew the full truth. Publicly, the story was simple. Princess Dora, engaged to a respected businessman. My mother's side of the arrangement remained hidden. To the outside world, she was simply spending more time in Jeddah for health reasons. As the weeks passed, wedding preparations swallowed the palace. Dresses were chosen, guest lists debated, menus planned. The fact that there would be 2 nikahs, 2 contracts with the same man, was discussed only in whispers, behind thick doors. My mother and I avoided each other's eyes. One evening, a few days before the first ceremony, I walked into her room without knocking, something I rarely did. I found her sitting on the floor, back against the bed, her abaya loosened, her face bare. "Ummi," I said softly. Tell me the truth. Did you agree to this? She closed her eyes for a long moment. When she opened them, they were flooded with years of stories I had never heard. Your grandfather once promised me to Faisal, she said quietly. We were young. It was arranged. Then your father's family intervened. They had more power, more money. The promise was broken. I married your father instead. And I obeyed. Did you love him, Faisal? I asked. Her lips trembled. I loved the idea of choosing. I never got to know whether that love was real or just the shadow of a dream. The silence between us grew heavy. And now? I whispered. Sharing him with me? Her shoulders shook. This is not what a mother chooses, Dora. This is what a woman in our world accepts when all the doors around her are locked from the outside. We cried together that night for the first time in my life. 2 generations of submission colliding in one room. The nikah ceremonies themselves were performed with clinical efficiency. In a grand hall rented in Jeddah, I sat under a canopy of white flowers while religious officials recited the contract. I heard my name, his name. The Mar agreed. The witnesses. When they asked if I accepted, my lips formed the word Naam before my heart could pull it back. Hours later, in a smaller private room, my mother signed her document as well. The same man, the same pen, 2 signatures, binding us to a reality no girl imagines when she hears the word marriage. Our first night under one roof with Faisal felt like walking into a storm with no shelter. Rooms were assigned, schedules quietly negotiated. The unspoken question hanging constantly in the air. Who will he go to tonight, mother or daughter? There are details I will not describe, not because I am ashamed, but because some traumas are better summarized than relived. I will only say this. Every boundary of what I believed was normal hardship for a woman was crossed. My body was present, my soul was not. I began to understand that my cage was not just cultural, it was spiritual. For most of my life, Salah had been something I did because it was expected. After we moved into Faisal's Jeddah villa, my prayers became something else entirely. They became protest. At first, I did what I had always done. I laid out the prayer rug, covered myself, recited the verses I had memorized as a child. But now, instead of comfort, each word felt heavy. The more I repeated phrases about obedience, the more a quiet rebellion grew in my chest. One night, after sharing the same hallway with my mother, as we both waited to see which door Faisal would open, I locked myself in my room and fell to my knees on the rug. Ya Allah, I whispered, how can this be from you? The question itself felt dangerous. We were taught never to interrogate God, only ourselves. Yet the words poured out, raw and unpolished. I did everything right, I cried. I wore the hijab. I memorized your book. I obeyed my father. Why is my reward humiliation? Why must my mother and I share this shame? Is this justice? Is this mercy? My tears soaked the rug. My forehead pressed the floor so hard that it ached. I read fatwas secretly, searching for some clear universal rule that would scream, no, this is wrong. Instead, I found loopholes, justifications, and scholars bending around power. If a respected sheikh had signed off on our arrangement, who was I to say they were wrong? Still, something inside me refused to agree. Days turned into weeks. I became thinner. My smiles grew mechanical. At family gatherings, I played my role. Inside, a silent scream grew louder. My mother deteriorated too. Sometimes I heard her crying behind the bathroom door, water running to hide the sound. One particularly suffocating night, exhausted from the pretense, I did something I had never done before. In the privacy of my room, lights off, window cracked open to the hot Jeddah air, I prayed without formula. No titles, no rules, I whispered into the darkness. Whoever the real God is, show yourself. Please. I cannot do this anymore. If this is your will, then tell me why. If it is not, then rescue us. I do not care which name you use. I expected lightning. Or silence. Instead, I got something else. A dream. The first dream came on a night when exhaustion finally dragged me into sleep sometime before dawn. I found myself standing in a place that looked nothing like Saudi Arabia. There were no palace walls, no gates, no cameras, just an open, endless plain flooded with gentle light. The air itself felt alive, like it was breathing peace. Ahead of me stood a man dressed in white, not white like our thobes or abayas, white that seemed to glow, like it was made of light itself. His face was both familiar and new, as if every safe person I had ever known had been combined into one presence. His eyes held something I had never seen on any man's face in my world, pure, unhurried compassion. He spoke first. Dora, he said, in perfect Arabic, the classical kind my tutors loved. My daughter. Just 2 words, and something inside me broke. No one called me daughter like that. In my world, Binti usually came with expectations, shame, or instruction. In his voice, it came with belonging. I fell to my knees in the dream. Who are you? I asked, my voice shaking. He stepped closer. There was no threat in his movement, only invitation. I have seen your tears, he said. You think no one hears you in that room in Jeddah. I hear you. You think you are alone in this cage. You are not. Tears streamed down my face. Are you Allah? I asked, confused. Are you an angel? He smiled sadly, almost as if my question hurt him. I am the one who came for the broken, the one your books call Isa, others call me Jesus. I am the one who lays down his life instead of requiring yours. The name hit me like thunder. Jesus. In Islam, I had been taught that Jesus was a respected prophet, but nothing more. To Christians, he was something else entirely, but Christianity was a distant world we were warned about more than taught about. Yet here he was, in my dream. I am not here to add another burden, he continued. I am here to carry the ones you already have. I looked up at him, my heart pounding. Then why am I still here? Why is my mother still there? Why do you not just remove us? His gaze grew intense, but it did not burn. Because I am not only interested in changing your circumstances, I am interested in changing your hearts. You were taught that your value is in your submission to men. I say your value is in being. My daughter, I will make a way. But first, you must know me. When I woke up, my pillow was wet with tears, my chest tight, my room still dark. I tried to convince myself it was just a dream, but the peace lingering in the air felt more real than the walls around me. I told no one about the dream. In our world, to say, Jesus came to me, would invite accusations of madness or possession. So, I carried the memory like a secret jewel in my pocket, touching it when the days grew too heavy. But curiosity is a powerful thing. Whenever the house grew quiet and Faisal was out at meetings, I would slip into his small office and sit at the computer. I opened a private browser and typed slowly, in Arabic and English, Jesus dreams Muslim woman. Hundreds of stories appeared. Women from Iran, men from Pakistan, young people in North Africa, people who had never read a Bible, never entered a church, describing dreams so similar to mine that my hands began to shake. A man in white. Endless light. The same mixture of peace and gentle authority. One story caught my breath. A Saudi woman from a respected family, writing anonymously, described crying out one night, "If there is a God who hears women, show yourself." And then, Jesus appeared to her in a dream. I leaned closer to the screen as if I could climb into the words. Late that night, I searched for an Arabic Bible. I knew enough about our laws to understand the danger. Still, I found a PDF version. My heart hammered as I downloaded it, saving it in a hidden folder with an innocent name. The first passage I read was from the Injil, the Gospels. A story about Jesus and a woman caught in adultery. Men wanted to stone her. He stopped them with one sentence. Whoever was without sin should throw the first stone. In my world, women bore the weight of honor, and men owned the vocabulary of shame. Here was a man protecting a woman from violence, not by denying her sin, but by exposing the hypocrisy around her. I whispered into the glow of the screen, "Who are you?" Days turned into weeks. The dreams continued. Sometimes he spoke. Sometimes he simply stood near me, and I woke up with the strange feeling of having been seen, not evaluated, not measured, just seen. I still prayed in the Islamic way in front of my family, but privately, after everyone slept, I would sit on my rug and say, "Isa, Jesus, if this is really you, keep speaking. I am listening." Something quiet but seismic was shifting inside me. My cage had not disappeared, but a door had appeared in one wall. While my secret world with Jesus was expanding, my mother's world was collapsing. She carried her role as co-wife like a wound hidden under silk. In front of the staff, she smiled. In front of my father on the phone, she lied. In front of Faisal, she folded herself into the old patterns of pleasing and minimizing her own needs. But alone, when she thought no one could hear, I heard things that still make my heart ache. One afternoon, I passed by her room and heard swallowing sobs. I hesitated, then knocked softly. "Ummi." Silence. Then a forced, "Naam, Habibti." "One moment." I opened the door anyway. She sat on the floor, back against the bed, a prayer rug crumpled beside her, her eyes swollen and red. A small Quran lay open, pages damp at the edges. "Ummi," I whispered, kneeling beside her. "What's happening?" She let out a bitter laugh. I had never heard from her before. "What's happening?" she repeated. "My daughter shares my husband. That is what's happening." The sentence sliced the air. I grabbed her hand. "We didn't choose this." She pulled her fingers away. "Didn't we? I said nothing when your grandfather made decisions for me. I said nothing when your father made decisions for us. Silence is a kind of choice, Habibti. And now you stand where I once stood." Her words felt like both confession and curse. I wanted to tell her about the dreams, about Jesus, about this strange new hope growing inside me. But the words tangled in my throat. I was afraid she would think I had completely lost my mind. Instead, I asked, "Do you ever feel like Allah is not listening?" She stared at the ceiling for a long time. "I feel like He listens only to the men," she said finally, "or that the men have stolen His voice and put their own words in His mouth. I do not know anymore." Her honesty shocked me. Mothers in our world were not supposed to speak like that, not to daughters. That night, I prayed differently. "Jesus," I whispered, "if you are real, if you truly see us, then you see her too. Do not only rescue me, rescue her. I cannot bear to walk out of this cage alone." He did not answer immediately, but a plan was already unfolding that would change both our lives. It began suddenly, like a storm that appears in a clear sky. One evening, after a long day of meetings, Faisal returned home complaining of a headache. By nightfall, he had a fever so high that even the head housekeeper looked frightened. The villa's doctor was called. He ordered tests, drips, medication. Nothing worked. The next day, Faisal's condition worsened. He vomited, sweated, muttered incoherent sentences. His normally commanding voice was reduced to weak groans. His hands, which had once described business deals in the air with confidence. Doctors came and went. Blood was drawn, scans performed, specialists consulted. Every test came back with the same frustrating conclusion. Nothing obvious was wrong. No infection, no tumor, no poison. "I have never seen such a case," one specialist admitted to my father over the phone. "The body is responding as if under attack, but we cannot find the attacker." To my family, this was a medical mystery. To me, it felt like an answer. That night I had another dream. I stood outside Faisal's bedroom door, the same one my mother and I had waited near so many evenings. The hallway was familiar, but instead of harsh white light, it was filled with a soft glow. Jesus stood beside me. "Do you remember what you asked me?" he said gently. I swallowed. "I asked you to rescue me, to rescue us." He nodded. "You asked if I saw your mother." "I do." I see every woman whose story was stolen before she even learned how to speak it. We both looked at the closed door. I will not force anyone to love me, he continued, but I will create a way where there seems to be none. I looked up at him, tears forming. Is this illness from you? He held my gaze. I am not a god of cruelty, Dora, but I can use the brokenness of this world to break chains. What has been used to control you will now be used to free you. When I woke, it was still night. The villa was quiet except for the hum of the air conditioning and distant footsteps of nurses. I walked down the hallway, my abaya pulled tight, my heart pounding. A nurse stood outside Faisal's door, glancing at his chart. She did not stop me as I slipped inside. He lay there, a tangle of wires and blankets, sweat glistening on his forehead, his powerful body reduced to fragile bones and labored breaths. For the first time, I did not see my nightmare. I saw a broken man in need of the same mercy I did. I stood by his bed and whispered, barely audible, Jesus, if you truly are who you say you are, touch him, but more than his body, touch his soul, and use this to open a path out of this cage. Days stretched. His condition remained serious. My father insisted on transferring him to a hospital in Europe, where the best doctors money could buy would examine him. My mother and I exchanged a look when we heard the plan. Europe meant distance from our controlled world. Distance meant possibility. The door in my cage was opening wider. The decision was made quickly. Faisal would be flown to Germany for advanced treatment. My father, concerned with both reputation and control, insisted that I accompany him as the dutiful young wife. My mother, officially, would remain in Jeddah for rest, but I saw the panic in her eyes. 3 days later, I stepped onto a private jet with my husband unconscious on a stretcher, a medical team bustling around him, and 2 security guards who thought their job was simply to escort a princess abroad. They did not know God had other plans. As the jet lifted off from Jeddah, I pressed my forehead against the window and watched the city lights recede. Somewhere below, my mother stood in a villa that still smelled of his cologne and our tears. Stay close to her, I whispered under my breath, speaking not to any human, but to the man who had appeared in my dreams. The flight was long. Doctors checked monitors. Nurses whispered in German. The guards watched sports on their phones. I sat in my reclined seat, blanket over my lap, heartbeat too loud in my ears. Halfway through the flight, a nurse named Anna, short, blonde, with kind blue eyes, sat down across from me to explain the next steps. Her Arabic was broken, her English better. Princess, she said softly, when we land, Mr. Faisal will go straight to intensive care. You will have a separate car to the hotel. The hospital will arrange regular visiting hours. I nodded automatically. Then she hesitated, glancing at my abaya, my scarf, my guarded posture. Can I ask you something? She said. I tensed. Are you okay? She asked simply. No one had ever asked me that on a plane before. Not really. I opened my mouth to say, fine, the trained answer. Instead, the truth slipped out in 4 English words. I don't know anymore. Her eyes softened. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small silver cross on a chain. She did not try to give it to me. She simply held it in her palm. If you ever want someone to pray for you, she said quietly, not just for your husband, you can tell me. Jesus listens. The world seemed to slow. How do you know that? I whispered. She smiled, the kind of smile people have when they are remembering their own rescue. I stared at the cross. She closed her fingers around it again, respecting my distance, my culture, my fear, but something in the air shifted. When we landed in Germany, the plan looked simple from the outside. Ambulance to hospital, car to hotel, daily visits. Underneath that simplicity, another plan was forming, one designed not by royal protocol, but by a father who refused to leave his daughters in cages forever. The hospital in Germany was a different universe. Men and women walked the corridors side by side. Nurses called doctors by their first names. Patients questioned treatment plans openly. I moved through it all like a ghost wrapped in black fabric. my abaya and scarf marking me as foreign in every possible way. On the second day, after a tense visit with doctors who still had no answers about Faisal's mysterious condition, I wandered the hallway, pretending to look for a bathroom. Instead, I followed a small sign I had noticed the day before. The chapel was empty when I entered. Stained glass filtered sunlight into colors I had never seen inside a mosque. There were no carpets, no separation between men and women, no mihrab pointing toward Mecca, just rows of wooden benches and a simple wooden cross on the wall. I stood near the door at first, feeling like an intruder. Then I noticed a woman kneeling near the front, her shoulders shaking. She wore jeans and a sweater, her hair uncovered, her tears unchecked. I should have left her alone. Instead, I heard myself asking softly, in English, "Are you okay?" She looked up, startled, then wiped her face. "My son," she said, gesturing toward the pediatric wing. "Cancer. They say it is complicated." Her English was accented, not German. Eastern European, maybe. "I'm sorry," I said, and meant it. She studied me for a moment, taking in my clothes, my guarded posture. "And you? Someone you love is sick?" I nodded. "My husband." She moved over on the bench and patted the space beside her. "Sit. We can be sad together." My training screamed against it. Women in my world did not casually sit with strangers to talk about their hearts. But something about the chapel, about the cross on the wall, about the dreams I'd been having, everything pushed me to break one more unwritten rule. I sat. "This is where I come to talk to God," she said. "Sometimes I shout. Sometimes I just cry. I think He listens more to tears than to beautiful words." My throat tightened. In my world, we are taught that God listens more to beautiful words. She shrugged. "Maybe He listens to both. But I know this. When I say, 'Jesus, help,' something in here," she tapped her chest, "becomes less heavy." I stared at the cross. In a hospital chapel in a foreign country, sitting next to a crying mother whose name I didn't even know, I realized something profound. I was not the only woman begging God to intervene where medicine had reached its limits. We sat in silence for a long time. Before she left, she touched my arm gently. "Whatever your religion," she said, "if you ever want to say just, 'Jesus help,' I think He will understand." When she walked out, I remained. The chapel felt like the dreams, lit from within. I did not kneel. I did not fold my hands. I simply whispered, barely audible, "Jesus, if you are here like you were there, I need help." The air felt suddenly thicker, like someone had stepped into the room. I knew then that my story would not end in that hospital. It would end somewhere I had never imagined, in a life not built on fear at all. From this point, everything that happened moved quickly, like dominoes falling in a line God had arranged long before I realized it was there. A Christian social worker connected to the hospital noticed me coming often to the chapel. She introduced herself as Lena, speaking careful English, mixed with bits of Arabic she had picked up working with refugees. Slowly, over tea in the hospital cafeteria and brief conversations in the chapel, she learned pieces of my story. Not all at once, but enough. Saudi, royal family, complex marriage. No real freedom to choose my life. One day, she looked at me and said quietly, "You know there are organizations that help women like you, women who want to leave situations that are not safe or healthy. It is not simple. It is not easy. But it is possible." The word possible rang in my ears. I thought of my mother still in Jeddah, trapped in a house that smelled of a man's illness and our shared humiliation. I thought of my father, of the consequences, of the accusations of apostasy and shame. "I cannot just disappear," I said. "They will say I was kidnapped. They will look for me. They will hurt my mother." Lena nodded. "I know. That is why, if you ever decide to walk, it must be done wisely. And you must be sure you are not walking alone." "Am I alone?" I asked. She smiled faintly. "Not if you walk with Jesus." Over the next week, she put me in contact with a small network of believers who had experience helping people from strict backgrounds begin new lives. They spoke cautiously on encrypted apps, always reminding me, your safety first, your mother's safety. We move only when you say the word. Every night, I wrestled. I thought of Jesus in my dreams, telling me I was his daughter, not a piece of property. I thought of my mother's broken whisper, silence is a kind of choice. Verses about leaving father and mother for the sake of following him and receiving a new family in return. The world inside me was shifting tectonic plates. Finally, one night, alone in my hotel room, the German city lights glowing beyond the curtains, I knelt on the carpet, not in the scripted way I had been taught, but like a woman too tired to perform. Jesus, I said, I believe you are who you say you are. I believe you are not just a prophet. You are Lord. You see my mother. You see me. If I stay, I die slowly inside. If I go, I lose everything. If you are really the God who saves, then I choose you. Take my life. Take my story. Just do not let my mother be forgotten. There were no flashes of light. No audible voice. Just peace. Deep, quiet, decisive. The next day, I texted Lena one word. Ready. The night it happened did not look special from the outside. The sky over the German city was low and grey. The streets were wet from a light rain that had passed an hour earlier, leaving everything smelling metallic and clean. Inside my hotel room, the air felt heavy and electric, like the silence before a storm. I sat on the edge of the bed, abaya folded beside me, wearing jeans and a simple sweater Lena had bought, just in case. I had never worn jeans in public in my life. The fabric felt strange against my skin, like someone else's story. My phone buzzed. Lena. Car in 15 minutes. Are you sure? My fingers hovered over the screen. 1,000 arguments crashed through my mind all at once. You are betraying your family. You are dishonoring your father. They will say you are a bad Muslim, a bad daughter, a bad Saudi. They will say you were stolen. Then, quieter but stronger, another voice threaded through the noise. You are my daughter. I am giving you a way out. I took a slow breath and typed back one word. My hands shook as I picked up my abaya. For the last time, I wrapped the fabric around me in the careful way I had been taught, pinning the scarf under my chin. In the mirror, I looked exactly like the obedient Saudi princess I had always been. I barely recognized myself. The plan was simple on paper and incredibly dangerous in reality. After visiting hours, I was supposed to go down to the hospital cafeteria for tea, accompanied by the 2 guards. From there, I would say I needed the bathroom, slip through a connecting corridor to the gift shop area, and meet Lena near a side exit where the cameras didn't fully cover the street. 5 minutes, I whispered to myself. If anything goes wrong, Jesus, you know. I took the elevator down with the guards. They were relaxed, half distracted by their phones, satisfied that their princess was safely contained inside European walls, and their own understanding of the world. They walked behind me as I made my way down the corridor toward the cafeteria. I will just go to the bathroom first, I said in Arabic, pointing to the sign. Do you want coffee? One guard shrugged. We will wait here. Take your time. Those words, spoken casually, became a line between 2 lives, the one I had always known, and the one I was about to enter. Inside the bathroom, my heart pounded so loudly I could hear it in my ears. I entered a stall, closed the door, and locked it. My hands fumbled as I slipped off the abaya and scarf, revealing the jeans and sweater underneath. I folded the abaya and scarf into a neat bundle, hands moving automatically, muscles remembering years of practiced motions. I placed them on the toilet tank like a small funeral. Thank you, I whispered to the girl who had worn them, who had tried so hard to be good inside a system that was never designed to protect her. Then I left the stall. A woman at the sink glanced up at me and quickly looked away again. To her, I was just another young woman in European clothes now. No one bowed. No one watched. No one measured my worth by the fabric on my head. My legs felt unsteady as I left the bathroom, walked past the cafeteria entrance, and slipped down the side corridor that led to the gift shop. Every step felt loud, every breath suspicious. I expected a hand on my shoulder, a shout, a guard's voice calling my name. Nothing. At the far end of the corridor, a glass door led to a side street. Through it, I saw the glow of a small car idling at the curb, headlights soft in the drizzle. Lena stood beside it, umbrella in one hand, phone in the other. Our eyes met. For a moment, I froze. This was the point of no return. Beyond that door, everything familiar would fall away. My title, my wealth, my passport, my protection, my identity as the world knew it. But staying meant returning to a cage Jesus had already shown me a door out of. My fingers tightened around the small Bible in my bag. Jesus, I whispered. I am walking because I believe you are leading. If I fall, let it be into your arms. I pushed the door open. Cold air rushed in, smelling of rain and exhaust. Lena stepped forward immediately, opening the back door of the car. Quickly, she said, not unkindly. Before anyone notices. I slid into the seat. The car door shut with a soft, final thud. As the car pulled away from the hospital curb, the building receded behind us. Somewhere inside, a man who had owned my body and a system that had owned my choices continued as if nothing had changed. But everything had. For the first time in my life, I was not being driven somewhere. I was leaving. The safe house was a small apartment on the top floor of an old building in a neighborhood far from the hospital. It smelled faintly of coffee and cleaning spray, with mismatched furniture and thin walls. To me, it felt like a palace. A woman in her 50s named Marta greeted us at the door, her dark hair pulled into a bun, her face lined with years of concern and kindness. She hugged Lena first, then turned to me with open arms. I stiffened instinctively. In my world, physical affection from strangers was rare and tightly regulated. But something in her eyes, gentle, unhurried, unafraid of my story, melted my resistance. I let her hug me. "Welcome, child," she said in careful English. The word safe echoed inside me like a foreign song. The next days blurred into a quiet rhythm. Whispered phone calls, legal consultations, meetings with people from organizations who had helped others like me. They spoke of asylum, protection, new identities, timelines. It was overwhelming and terrifying. But beneath it all, a steady warmth remained. Jesus had not just opened the door, he had put people on the other side of it. On Sunday, Marta knocked on my bedroom door. "Church?" she asked, tilting her head. "You come?" I hesitated. The word church still felt dangerous, like something contraband. Growing up, I had seen images of churches on television, always in the context of other people's religion, usually framed with suspicion or superiority. "Yes," I said slowly, surprising myself. "I want to see." The church was smaller than I had imagined, no towering ceilings, no massive icons, just a simple white building with a wooden cross above the entrance. Inside, rows of chairs faced a small platform, with a microphone, a guitar, and a modest pulpit. People filtered in, families, elderly couples, students with backpacks, a few migrants with tired eyes. No one bowed to each other. No one kissed hands. No one looked at me with the measuring gaze I was used to. They smiled. "Welcome. Glad you're here. Good to see you." I sat in the back with Marta and Lena. When the music started, people stood. Words appeared on a screen at the front. I could not understand all the language, but some phrases in English appeared again and again. Grace, freedom, Father, Jesus. Voices rose, some strong, some shaky, some off-key. They did not sound like people performing for God. They sounded like people talking to someone they actually knew. I watched a man at the front, maybe in his 40s, eyes closed, hands lifted slightly, singing words about chains breaking and fear losing its hold. A woman beside him sang with tears in her eyes, her hand on her heart. The air felt thick, like the dreams. I did not sing, I just listened. After the songs, a pastor came forward, a tall man with kind eyes and a worn Bible. He began to speak, and Lena leaned over to whisper a translation into my ear. He told a story I recognized, but with details I had never heard this way. The parable of the prodigal son, a boy who took his inheritance, wasted it, ended up feeding pigs, and then decided to return home as a servant. The father, instead of punishing him, ran to meet him, embraced him, and restored him as a son. This, the pastor said, is what the Father's love looks like. He is not waiting with a stick. He is waiting with open arms. Some of you think you have to earn your way back with perfect behavior. Jesus tells you today, you come as you are. I will do the washing. I will do the restoring. Just come home. My throat tightened. In my world, I had always been told that God's approval was at the end of a ladder of obedience, modesty, and honor. One misstep, and you fell. One rumor, and your reputation was ruined. Here, the father ran first. At the end of the service, the pastor invited anyone who wanted prayer to come forward. I felt a battle inside me. Part of me wanted to remain invisible. Another part of me was already standing. My legs chose before my mind did. I walked slowly to the front, heart pounding, palms sweaty. The pastor noticed me and smiled gently. Would you like prayer? Lena translated my hesitant words. I am from Saudi. I left my family. My life is complicated. Jesus came to me in dreams. I think I belong to him now, but I don't know what that means. The pastor's eyes filled with something like awe. Jesus has been pursuing you for a long time, he said. He is very good at finding his daughters. He asked if he could place a hand on my shoulder. I nodded. As he prayed, his words were simple. Father, thank you for your daughter. Thank you that you saw her in a palace, in a villa, in a hospital, and now here. Thank you for rescuing her not just from a situation, but for yourself. Fill her with your spirit. Let her know she is truly, fully, permanently yours. I did not understand all the theology, but I understood this. I was not a guest in God's house. I was family. Weeks passed. Asylum paperwork began. My legal status was fragile but moving in the right direction. I learned to take the tram, to buy groceries, to cook simple meals. The palace girl who had never been to a supermarket now compared prices on tomatoes. Yet, even as my new life slowly formed around me, part of my heart remained in Jeddah. In my dreams, I still saw my mother in that villa, moving like a ghost in her own story. I wondered what lies she was being told about my disappearance. Kidnapped, brainwashed, deceived, dishonoring the family. One evening, sitting at Marta's small kitchen table, phone in hand, I stared at a secure messaging app open to an empty chat window, labeled only with a code name. This contact is trustworthy? I asked Lena again. She nodded. As much as anyone can be in a situation like this. She is a nurse in Jeddah. She works with women in difficult circumstances. She knows how to be careful. And she is a believer. Believer. The word still felt miraculous to me. I typed a cautious message. I am a woman who left. My mother is still there. I need to know if she is safe. Hours passed. I went to bed with my phone beside me, waking every hour to check it. At 3 a.m, a reply appeared. Your mother is alive. Her heart is broken. Her health is not good. Tears blurred the screen. The nurse described what she had seen. A woman in her late 40s. Weight loss. Migraines. Insomnia. Episodes of fainting. A woman who cried in bathrooms and stared out windows for long stretches, fingers pressed to her chest as if something inside hurt more than her body could handle. It is not only physical, the nurse wrote. It is the weight of shame, the feeling of being trapped. She believes she must bear this to please God and family. I swallowed hard. Can you tell her anything? I asked. A long pause. I cannot risk revealing your location. came the reply. "But I can tell her that God sees her, that she is loved, that her daughter is not dead, that someone is fighting for both of you. Someone, Jesus." In the weeks that followed, the nurse became a quiet lifeline between two worlds. She never shared details that could endanger us, but she sent small updates. "Your mother is reading," one message said. "Your mother had a dream," another message said. "She saw a man in white standing at the foot of her bed. She woke up weeping. I did not say anything about Jesus. She told me herself. I sat on my narrow bed, holding the phone, heart pounding. He had not forgotten her. Sometimes guilt stabbed me sharp, accusing. You escaped. You left her. But each time, when I brought that guilt to Jesus in prayer, I sensed the same quiet reassurance. You did not save yourself. I did. And I am not limited by distance or borders. News about my father and Faisal filtered through in fragments. My father was furious, of course. He launched investigations, pressured embassies, demanded answers. The official story became that I had been abducted by Western influences. It was easier than admitting that his control had cracks. Faisal's condition remained unstable. Some said he was cursed. Others said it was stress. Others whispered that Allah was punishing him. I did not rejoice in his suffering. But I could not deny the strange symmetry. The man who had divided women like property was being divided from his own power. In my small church I lit a candle for my mother and whispered, "Do for her what you did for me. Maybe not in the same way, maybe not out of the country, but out of the cage inside her heart." Jesus did not answer in sentences. He answered in small, steady changes, one message at a time. My new life did not begin with fanfare. It began with paperwork. At the asylum office, I sat in plastic chairs next to people from countries I had only ever seen on news channels. A family from Syria, a young man from Eritrea, a woman with 2 children from Afghanistan. We all held folders, numbers, bags containing the small collections of our lives. No one here cared about my last name. No one here bowed when I entered the room. When my number was called, I sat before an official with tired eyes and a thick file. An interpreter sat beside me. I told my story, not all the details, not the dreams, not the man in white, but enough. Forced marriage, shared husband with my own mother, lack of freedom, fear of honor, violence if I returned, a decision to leave. The official asked questions calmly, typing notes. At one point, he paused. "You came from a very wealthy background," he said. "You understand that if your application is accepted, you will not have that lifestyle here." I looked at him steadily. "I was rich in things," I said. "Not in freedom." He nodded and wrote something down. In the months that followed, my status remained pending. I moved into a small shared apartment provided by a Christian charity. My room had a bed, a small wardrobe, and a desk. The window overlooked a busy street with a bakery on the corner. Sometimes the smell of bread woke me before my alarm did. I learned to navigate this new world piece by piece. I attended language classes, stumbling over verbs and grammar. I burned rice the first 3 times I tried to cook it on my own. I learned how to use a washing machine, how to read bus schedules, how to top up a prepaid phone. There were moments of deep humiliation standing in line for government assistance, filling out forms I barely understood, needing Marta's help to call utility companies. The girl who once had servants now scrubbed her own bathroom. And yet, there was dignity in it. Every task I did for myself reminded me that I was a person, not a porcelain figure in someone else's display case. Church became my anchor. I joined a small Bible study for women from different backgrounds. A former atheist from Europe, a refugee from Iran, a student from West Africa. We read the Gospels together, underlining sentences, asking questions that sometimes made us all laugh at how little we knew and how much we wanted to understand. One evening, we read Jesus' words, "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest." I closed my eyes, remembering years of trying to carry the weight of my family's honor, my father's expectations, my mother's sadness, my own shame. For the first time, I believed that the invitation included me. I began volunteering at the church, making tea, stacking chairs, helping translate for other Arabic speakers. People stopped introducing me as the Saudi princess who escaped and started introducing me simply as our sister, Dora. It felt right. There were hard days too. Days when I missed the sound of Arabic in the streets. Days when I missed my mother's cooking. Days when I saw a woman in an abaya on the tram and felt a sudden ache, as if my old and new lives were colliding on a moving train. On those days, I would slip into the back of the church, sit in the quiet, and whisper, "Jesus, remind me why you brought me here." The answer was never a list of reasons. It was always the same sense of presence I had first felt in my dreams, steady, patient, unafraid of my confusion. "You are no longer a prisoner," that presence seemed to say. "You are mine." About a year after I left Germany for my asylum country, the pastor of my church asked me a simple question. "Have you thought about baptism?" The word stirred something deep. In Islam, ritual washing had always been about purity. Before prayer, a constant cycle of getting dirty, washing, getting dirty again. Baptism sounded different in the way Christians spoke of it. Not just washing the outside, but symbolizing a whole new life. Burial of the old, rising to the new. I thought about it for weeks. Could I really stand in front of people, publicly declaring that I belonged to Jesus now? That I had left not only a country and a marriage, but an entire belief system? Would that make it impossible to ever reconcile with my family? If such a thing were even possible? Then another thought followed. Hadn't I already crossed that line in my heart? Yes, I told the pastor one afternoon in his small office, where books were stacked in uneven piles. I want to do it. I want the whole world, whoever is watching, to know I belong to him. We chose a date. On the morning of my baptism, the church felt fuller than usual. Friends from Bible study came. Volunteers from the refugee ministry came. Marta and Lena sat in the front row, eyes bright. A few people from a nearby Arabic fellowship joined, whispering quiet prayers in my mother tongue. I wore a simple white dress, under a long, modest robe. My hair, once hidden under layers of fabric, fell loose down my back. The baptismal pool was not fancy, just a large tub built into the floor, filled with warm water. The pastor stepped in first, then held out his hand to help me down. The water rose to my waist, then my chest. He spoke to the congregation. "This is our sister, Dora. Many of you know her story. She comes from a place where following Jesus can cost everything. Today, she chooses to declare publicly what is already true in her heart, that she died with Christ and has been raised to new life with him. She also has chosen a second name, a name that reflects what Jesus has done in her life. Is Dara Naid." He turned to me. "What is that name?" I swallowed hard, tears already burning. "Grace," I said softly, "because I did nothing to deserve what he has done for me." He smiled. "Dora Grace," he said, so everyone could hear. "Do you confess that Jesus Christ is Lord, that he died for your sins, rose again, and that you belong to him now and forever?" My voice shook, but the words were clear. "Yes, with all my heart." "Then I baptize you," he said, "in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit." He lowered me into the water. For a brief, suspended moment, I felt weightless. Memories flickered across my mind: the palace, my father's study, my mother's tears, Faisal's villa, the hospital, the chapel, the safe house, the church. Then he lifted me up. Water streamed down my face. The congregation clapped. Some people cheered. Others wept. I stood there, soaked and shaking, as if the world had been reset. Later, wrapped in a towel, hair damp, eyes still swollen from crying, I stood before a small group and shared my testimony. I did not go into every detail, but I said the things that mattered most. I was taught that my worth depended on my obedience to men and my ability to protect my family's honor, I said quietly. Jesus came to me in dreams and told me my worth was in being his daughter. I was given a marriage I did not choose, forced to share a husband with my own mother. I thought that was my destiny. Jesus wrote a different story. I am not a princess anymore. I am something better. I am His. After the service, people hugged me, congratulated me, handed me cards with handwritten Bible verses. One little girl came up, her hair in braids, and asked shyly, "Are you really a princess?" I knelt to her level and smiled. "I used to be," I said. "Now I am a daughter of the King. You can be too." She grinned, not fully understanding, but sensing that something beautiful had happened. That night, in my small room, hair still slightly damp, I texted the nurse in Jeddah. "Today I was baptized," I wrote. "I belong to Jesus now, openly. Tell my mother that her daughter is not lost. She is found." The reply came hours later. "Your mother has begun to pray to Jesus in secret. She says she feels less alone when she does. She does not understand everything, but she told me, if He can find my daughter, He can find me too." Tears fell onto my phone screen. 2 women, 2 countries, 1 Savior. It did not happen all at once. There was no dramatic scene of my mother standing up in the middle of the palace and shouting, "I follow Jesus now." Ours was not a Hollywood story. It was a slow, quiet miracle happening behind closed doors, under veils, in whispers and dreams. The nurse in Jeddah, whom I had come to think of as my secret aunt in Christ, sent me updates whenever she safely could. "Your mother is very tired," she wrote once, "but she has stopped blaming herself for everything." She told me, "Maybe God does not hate me after all." Another time, "She keeps having dreams of the man in white. Sometimes he is just standing near her bed. Sometimes he is sitting at a table with her, listening as she pours out her heart. She wakes up with peace instead of panic." One message made my hands tremble. I gave her a small New Testament, very carefully. She hides it in an old box of scarves. She reads at night with a flashlight. She told me, "I never knew Jesus spoke so much about women. He never treats them like objects." I pictured my mother, Princess Najwa, the woman who had spent her youth being traded in negotiations between powerful men, now sitting on her bed with a small book, reading stories about a man who defended a woman caught in adultery, who spoke with a Samaritan woman by a well, who praised a woman who sat at his feet to listen. The same man who had stood beside me in my dreams was now standing beside her in hers. One day, the nurse wrote, she asked me, "Can I speak to him directly, or do I need someone to go between us?" I told her she could talk to Jesus any time, in any place. She did not need a priest or an imam in between. Just her heart. My chest tightened. For so long, my mother's relationship with God had been filtered through men, through husbands, fathers, scholars, systems. The idea that she could speak to him herself, without going through the gatekeepers, was revolutionary. A week later, she prayed aloud for the first time with me. She said, "Jesus, if you are really Lord, I give you whatever is left of my life. I don't know how to leave this house, but I know you can enter it. Make something beautiful from my shame." I read the words over and over, tears blurring the screen. My mother had always believed that her value was tied to silently enduring whatever was placed on her shoulders. Now she was handing those burdens to someone stronger than the entire system that had oppressed her. In my own city, far away, I lit a candle and whispered, "Welcome, Ummi. Welcome home." The nurse also shared how the dynamics in the house were changing. Faisal's health, while improved, was never fully restored. He seemed smaller, somehow less invincible, more cautious. He traveled less. He grew quieter. My father's influence in the family politics also began to shift. As younger, more globally minded relatives took positions of power, no one could officially name what had happened. But in the shadows, in the places God often prefers to work, chains were loosening. My mother started setting small boundaries, refusing certain gatherings for her health, insisting on separate spaces, spending hours alone with her scarf box, which was no longer just silk and fabric, but pages and promises. She became kinder to her own reflection, according to the nurse, less harsh in the way she spoke about her age, her body, her worth. She smiles more, the nurse wrote. Not the practiced court smile, a real one. One day, years later, long after my own asylum was granted, and I had begun to build a life that felt stable, my phone buzzed with a video call request from an unknown number. My heart stopped, hands shaking. I accepted. The screen flickered, then cleared. There she was. My mother, older now, a few more lines on her face, a soft scarf around her hair instead of the rigid, formal styles I remembered. Behind her, I could see the edge of a familiar room. Her eyes filled with tears. "Dora," she whispered. "Ummi." I choked out. "How?" The nurse's face briefly appeared in the corner of the screen, then disappeared again. "Just talk," she mouthed. "We are in a safe moment." My mother and I stared at each other for a long time, drinking in years of absence. "I heard you chose Jesus," she said finally, searching my face. I nodded slowly. A single tear slid down her cheek. "He chose me too," she said, pressing a hand to her chest. "In this house, in this cage. He came anyway." We did not have long. The call could not last more than a few minutes without risking suspicion. But in that brief space of time, compressed into pixels and seconds, 2 generations of women confessed their allegiance not to a family name, not to a culture, not to a system, but to a savior. "Whatever happens next," my mother said, "you must know this. I am not ashamed of you. I am proud. You were the first one brave enough to walk. I was the one who stayed. But he met us both." The call ended. The screen went black. I sat in the quiet, phone pressed to my heart, whispering, "Thank you, thank you, thank you." The miracle was not that my mother's circumstances had completely changed. The miracle was that her heart had. Time has a way of softening some edges and exposing others. In the years that followed, I built a life that would have seemed small and ordinary to the girl I once was, but to me, it felt like a wide, open field. I completed language courses and received permission to work. I found a job at a small community center helping other immigrant women navigate paperwork, schools, doctors. I translated, filled forms, explained letters. Every time I sat across from a woman in a headscarf with tired eyes, I saw a little of my mother and a little of who I used to be. I became the one who understands the person they could tell the truth to without fear of immediate judgment. At church, I continued to grow roots. I joined a team that visited vulnerable women in shelters. I taught a small children's class once a month, telling them simple stories about a God who loved them long before they understood the word love. And then, slowly, something happened that I did not expect. I fell in love. His name was Daniel. He was not a prince, not rich, not from a famous family. He worked as a carpenter and part-time youth leader at the church, with calloused hands and soft eyes. He listened more than he spoke. He never pushed. We started as friends, talking after services, laughing about cultural misunderstandings. He asked about my family, but never pressed for details beyond what I was willing to share. One evening, after walking me home from a Bible study, he stopped at the corner near my building. "Can I tell you something?" he asked, nervousness flickering across his face. I braced myself. "I pray for you," he said. "Not that you would forget your past, but that Jesus would heal every part of it. And I would like to get to know you more, not as someone to rescue, but as someone to walk beside. In my old life, getting to know you was not part of the vocabulary. Marriages happened through negotiations, contracts, alliances. Attraction was secondary. Friendship was optional. Here, a man was asking for my heart, not my status. I did something I had not done with any man before. I told him no. For now, I need time, I said honestly. My picture of men is broken. I need to see, consistently, that you are different, that you will not use my story as a trophy or a weapon. He nodded, a mixture of disappointment and respect in his eyes. Take all the time you need, he said. If Jesus wants this, it will not die easily. Over the next year, I watched him. I watched him when he thought no one was looking, stacking chairs, picking up trash, sitting on the floor with children to build Lego towers. I watched how he treated older women, listening patiently to their stories. I watched how he reacted when plans went wrong, when people let him down, when life was unfair. He did not explode. He did not sulk. He brought his frustrations to Jesus and then kept serving. One quiet afternoon, sitting by the river with coffee, I realized something startling. I was not afraid of him. That night, I prayed a prayer that surprised me. Jesus, if this is from you, then I am willing, not because I need a man to complete me, but because I can see how much you have already shaped his heart. Months later, under the blessing of our church, with a small group of friends gathered in a simple room, I married Daniel. There were no gold-trimmed invitations, no 100-course feasts, no royal photographers. I wore a modest white dress, borrowed from another woman in the church. Marta cried. Lena laughed and cried at the same time. The pastor spoke about covenant not as a contract between families, but as a picture of Jesus and his church. When Daniel took my hand and slipped a simple ring onto my finger, his voice trembled. I do not own you, he said, eyes locked on mine. You belong to Jesus first. I promise to love you like he loves his people sacrificially, gently, patiently. I will never ask you to share me with anyone else. My heart is yours, and his. My vows were just as important. I am not marrying you to replace what I lost, I said. I am marrying you to walk forward into what Jesus is building. I will not worship you. I will not hide from you. I will tell you the truth, even when it is painful, and I will forgive you, because I have been forgiven much. We kissed, simple and shy. People clapped. Someone started a worship song. Children ran around our feet. Later that night, in our small apartment, with mismatched furniture and second-hand curtains, I felt more honored than I had ever felt in any palace. My worth was not being measured by how well I obeyed or how quietly I endured. My worth had already been established at the cross. Every year on our anniversary, I light a candle for my mother. Sometimes we manage brief calls, always careful, always coded. She cannot leave her context easily. But she tells me stories about the women she quietly encourages, the prayers she whispers in kitchens and courtyards. We are both married again, she said once, smiling sadly. You, to a kind man. Me, to a life with Jesus inside the same old walls. Both of us, redeemed. Our stories were different. Our Savior was the same. If you have listened this far, if you have read my story through all its twists and shadows, I want to speak to you now not as a princess, not as a refugee, not as a victim or a hero, but as a woman who was found. My name is still Dora. On paper, my last name has changed. My address has changed. My legal status has changed. My religion, according to the documents of my birth country, has changed in a way that might one day cost me more than I can imagine. But the most important change is invisible. I am no longer an object. I am a daughter. I was born into a world where religion and culture and family honor were woven into a net that caught women early and held them tight. Maybe your world looks different. Maybe your cage is not a palace in Saudi Arabia but a small apartment in another country. A controlling relationship. A church that misuses God's name to keep you silent. A culture that tells you your body is currency and your voice is noise. Cages come in many shapes. Mine just happened to have marble floors. You may be thinking, I am not a princess. My problems are not like yours. But listen closely. Shame speaks the same language everywhere. It tells you that you are responsible for everyone else's happiness, that your pain is a price you must pay to keep the peace, that if you speak, everything will fall apart, and it will be your fault. That is a lie. I want you to know this. Jesus did not just come for people like me in dreams. He came for people like you in your everyday reality. You do not need a dramatic escape across borders for him to love you. You do not need to have the right words or the right background or the right level of religious knowledge. You just need to be honest. I cried out to God one night in a room in Jeddah and said, Whoever the real God is, show yourself. I cannot do this anymore. I did not say it correctly. I did not follow a formula. I did not even know which name to use. He answered anyway. He came to me as Jesus, the one who lays down his life instead of demanding mine, the one who protects women instead of exposing them, the one who calls us daughters instead of property. He walked with me through my escape, my exile, my rebuilding. He reached into a palace and a hospital and a safe house and a small church to make it clear. No man, no system, no culture gets the final say about you. I do. This does not mean life became easy. I still carry scars. I still grieve what my mother and I lost and what she still endures. I still wrestle with fear when I think about what might happen if the wrong people hear my story, but I am no longer alone in that fear. If you are reading this in a place where saying the name Jesus out loud is dangerous, know this: he can hear whispers, he can hear thoughts, he can slip into dreams. No law can keep him out of a room. No family name can intimidate him. No shame can scare him away. If you are reading this in a place of freedom, but are chained inside by old wounds, know this: he is just as present in your quiet pain as he was in my loud crises. Your tears on a kitchen floor matter as much to him as my tears in a palace. So here is my invitation, from one woman to another. Find a moment when you are alone. It might be in a bathroom, on a balcony, in your car, on a walk. You do not have to kneel a certain way or say a perfect prayer. Just be honest. You can say something like this: Jesus, if you are really who you say you are, if you really see women, if you really love them, if you really died and rose again to give us new life, then show yourself to me. I am tired of cages. I am tired of pretending I am okay. I want to know the truth, even if it changes everything. Then pay attention. He may not appear in a blaze of light. He may send a person, a dream, a verse you stumble across, a song that speaks exactly to your heart. He may start by simply giving you courage for one small step, saying no where you always said yes, telling the truth to someone safe, refusing to carry blame that is not yours. That is how cages begin to crack. My story is not a rule book. It is just one testimony among thousands of women Jesus is quietly rescuing in Saudi Arabia and in Europe, in America and in Asia, in cities and villages and refugee camps. You are not forgotten. You are not invisible. You are not too complicated, too dirty, too broken. The same Jesus who met a Saudi princess forced to share her husband with her own mother, who took that mess and turned it into a path of freedom and redemption, can meet you right where you are. Not because you are worthy, but because he has already decided that you are worth it.